Hey, welcome to Woodworking Jigs and Fixtures 4. Now, a lot of these are specific to tasks that I'm doing, but you can certainly take the idea and incorporate it into your workflow. Let's get going. Hey, real quick, some of this footage is older and I apologize for the portrait format. All right, so this plywood ladder is getting ready to get glued up, and these dudes, they all fit really well. Incidentally, rather than cutting those dados across the Baltic birch, I began with a layer of 3/4 and then I added 1/4 inch between the rungs to form those dados. You can see it there. So, yeah, just needs some glue. Okay, so working on this plywood ladder, right? And I've laid out, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there's a couple of marks here laid out so I can put a domino, 2 dominoes going all the way through that to tighten that thing up and support it better. And I made a simple jig, just a couple of pieces of plywood. This will slide up against there. This part hits right on the rung. That's the registration point. Clamp this dude down. And now I can take the domino, line up the center mark with one of these marks on the jig, plunge down, and scoot it over, do another one there. Then I can put the dominoes in, leave them proud, glued in of course, and then cut them flush, and maybe a contrasting species. Should look pretty cool. Oh hey, in case you're wondering how strong could a plywood ladder be, well, I weigh about 200 pounds and I use this thing all the time. Sometimes I'm carrying stuff up or down the ladder, and since 2017 it still looks beautiful. Okay, so here I am at my bandsaw. I wanted to show you this little trick. I've got all these dominoes cut, and a lot of times these are going to be exposed, so I'm just going to cut a hole all the way through and slip these in. But a lot of times when you do that, you'll get hydraulics. When you try to push that in the hole, the glue will either crack the material or it'll come back out. So I'm cutting these little glue grooves, and they're tapered. That way the groove doesn't show at the end of the tenon. So this slot, I cut it at an angle, 2 degrees with my domino machine. And there's a stop here. Let me just show you. And bad camera angle, my finger is off to the side, so don't fret, Chia Pet. Pretty simple. It's just some scrap material. It rides in the groove and cuts that glue groove at an angle. Yeah, simple, kind of cool, and very effective. All right, here it is, wedged domino tenons into the rungs. It's very strong, and it can't come forward because I've got a couple of domino tenons going into that rail up there, and then the 2 plates keep it from going sideways. There's 2 more plates on the other side so I can access over there as well. And then when I'm not using it, right, this dude lives up here like so, right? And his clearance is 73 inches, so 6'1", no worries there. Now, I don't make many cabinets anymore, but when I was doing a lot of commercial casework, we used a lot of melamine for Euro-style box construction, and this was our method of choice. You're creating a dado, or a rabbet actually, and that way you're getting rid of some of that melamine. So now it's raw wood and you can get a much stronger bond. In addition, the added shoulder creates some strength. So I start with a bit that is wider than the width of the rabbet, and I can bury that bit under the fence to create that cut. Okay, I'm setting this up. I've got a straight bit in my router and a fence, and I want this to protrude from the fence an 1/8 inch. This is similar to my bandsaw jig, 2 1/8-inch drill bits. Place those there, and then I can loosen that fence and adjust it till it just makes contact. Bam, right there. Tighten that down. I'll do a sample test, but I'm confident that that will cut an 1/8 inch. Okay, so this is a relish cut. I've got everything set up. Let me show you how that works. Okay, so By making a stopped rabbet and this relish cut, I don't have to go all the way through and risk blowing that out. This is a technique we use for commercial cabinets. It creates a shoulder and this rabbet and a relish cut to make that nice tight joint in the front. So that's why I was fussing about getting these 1/8 inch depths exactly right, because they have to correspond.
This is a simple drilling jig over the drill press to create really precise locations of some holes in my zero clearance inserts that I sell. Let me show you how this works. Of course, this jig relates to my situation here, but the process could be utilized in many different applications. So I start by locating where this goes, and I'll show you how I do that in a bit, and then of course I anchor it down. And then I'm simply drilling a hole, removing a spacer, drilling a hole, lather, rinse, repeat. Spacers are an excellent way to stay accurate. Or I can start with a hole, add a spacer, so on and so forth. And these holes are actually not in line. 2 of the end ones are close to the middle, and then the other 2 are toward the edge. But with spacers, I can achieve all that. And here's how I precisely locate this fixture. I have this hardened bushing. I can line that up with a drill bit to start, then clamp the fixture in place. Alright, here at my belt sander platform, I install this belt sander on its edge, ensure that it's 90, and then I have this auxiliary fixture, template, jig. So in the machinist arena, a jig guides the tool and a fixture holds the work, but they overlap in definition, the 2 words get interchanged, and truly, for me, in woodworking, it's no big shake. I think most people understand what we're talking about here. So yeah, this is a super quick way to consistently create all these chamfers. This is real time. I believe I have a 180 grit belt on there, and it's quick, easy, consistent, beautiful. So that worked great for the long edges, and let me zoom in a little, there we go. And now I'll add a screw. Let's magnetize that to give it a little bit more tack, stick. And with the screw, it'll give me a little bit of adjustment. And then we can do the same thing, put a chamfer on all the short edges, or corners I should say. Again, this is real time, and then bam, get the job done quickly, yeah? And yeah, this would work for so many different applications or situations. This miter cutting fixture has these 2 edges, and they're both anchored down. They're located at 90 degrees, so even if they're twisted, it will still produce a 90-degree corner. They might not be 45 degrees, but it'll still make a 90-degree corner. That's the idea behind a miter cutting sled like we have here. However, notice the direction that the miter enters the saw blade. We're cutting into the grain, and every jig that I've seen is designed this way. I'm going to show you another way to do this here in a bit. Yes, this jig is awesome, but we can do better. So years ago when I was teaching classes at our local college, this was the second rendition that I made for that class, and it just happened to fit my saw. This, you can see, has sandpaper on it, has a little bit of a stop block here, but primarily what you'll notice is that the blade is coming into the miter the opposite direction. Of course, that area is square, but now the blade's coming into that cut, so it favors the direction of the miter, or the grain orientation. Look at all other miter sleds out there, they're all opposite of this. It does make a difference.
Years ago, all my dovetails were hand cut until I was at a show one time and somebody came up, actually several people, came up to my booth and were inspecting my furniture, and a couple of them had mentioned that I had beautiful box joints on my drawer boxes. Well, after that I realized the only people that appreciate dovetails are other woodworkers. So I set out a different way to cut them. I wasn't the fastest, but they were clean, but they took a long time. So I started getting my blades ground by my blade sharpener to 8 degrees. I had a flat top and one that was ground 8 degrees. Years later, this is actually now a process where you can buy these blades. And even though these are proud, you know, protruding dovetails, they are beautiful and tight and relatively quick to make. The process involves utilizing a couple of different blades. This one has an 8 degree right hand grind, and this one is just a regular blade, but it has a flat top tooth configuration. In addition, I have a couple of jigs. You can see these bolts that go through here, and I have this Craig jig. This will slip on here like so, maybe. There we go. And actually, I would start with this guy. Tails first. Once that's in place, of course, I would tighten this down. And you can see I've cut this. This is just sacrificial, so I would probably just find a new area to cut that. And with that, I could set up the 8 degree blade, right? Angle the saw to 8 degrees, and I have this jig that I made with a nice 8 degree bevel, so I can just, you know, double check that, make sure that it's 8 degrees, and then make all these cuts. And simply put this in place, the blade is angled, and I make the cuts. If I'm doing multiples, which you typically are with dovetails, I will set up a stop block, clamp this in place, and then use spacers to create those cuts. You make all your cuts, flip this around, make all your cuts. The spacer block, I would have a piece of sandpaper on it, and I had one, I'm not sure where it's at, it probably got used for something else. Put a small bevel here, and that reduces the chance of sawdust getting in the corner. The sandpaper, well, you guessed it, better gription. So even though it's clamped, it is held very firmly. Once you make all those cuts on all your pieces, you switch to this jig. Same process. Straighten the blade, and then you rotate this fixture to 8 degrees. Again, I can use this dude to ensure 8 degrees. With this in place, then you would make the corresponding part of the dovetail.
Of course, with these cuts, you'd be using the other blade with a flat top grind.
It's quick, easy, accurate, and I have to admit, they look fantastic, yeah?
If you want to see more on this process, I have another YouTube videos, actually a couple of them. I'll leave a link in the descriptions. Tablesaw Dovetails Part 1 and Part 2.
This funky little jig is kind of crude and was quick to make, but works exceptionally well. So my son, Derek, creates these glass marbles, completely made by hand. He uses glass rod and a torch and a kiln, and it creates these completely made by hand. They are phenomenal. Anyway, he needed these little display blocks, and so I make a lot of these for him. And I just make length, of course, right? And then I cut them square. And I needed a way to create this dimple, and that dimple is what
holds the marble in place.
I use a core box bit, something like this, to create that dimple. Quick way to do it. And I use the drill press. I just turn the drill press up on high speed. So the way this works is these blocks will go in here. It's hard to see, but there's a wedge here so that this edge, the back edge, and this corner are all locked in place with no movement, and yet it's easy to get out. There's actually a hole here, and I have a small dowel that pushes the piece out. So once this is set up, anchor down at the drill press, I can bring this piece here like that, and the bit comes down at high speed, yet my hand is completely out of the way and safe. So quick and easy production mode, yeah? And then when they're all sanded. Of course, they get a little splash of lacquer, and bam, there you have it. Beautiful.
So I have a full-on automated dust system, but occasionally I'm just using a shop vac, and I recently purchased this remote activated. It is fantastic. Anyway, here's that jig in action. You can see this little skewer. I think this is actually a bamboo chopstick or something, but it pushes the little piece out, and that plywood that's vertical in the front, that just keeps my fingers away from that spinning bit. I think I'll even add one to the left side there.
All right, this is a great fixture. So this is an L fence, and years ago I had one. It was essentially just two boards in the shape of an L. It accomplished the same thing, but not near as versatile and cool and easy to use as this one. So this one is made by my buddy Ben Brunick with Chalkstone Woodworking. Let me show you how it works. All right, with an L fence, this goes against your table saw fence. And he made this really awesome with these match fit dovetail ways, and you put these match fit dovetail clamps, right? And just put that in place like that. That's awesome. And I usually will put this not quite centered, but back this way just a little bit. And the way this works, let's say we want to cut an odd shape, and I'm just going to make this like a trapezoid. So we'll make it on this end. We'll go 5.5. So I'm going to mark 5.5 here. Get a measurement from this side. That's 1 5/8 inches. So 13/16. Driving the Europeans crazy. 13/16. 5.5, close enough for what this is. And then we're going to taper it to about 3 on this side. Let's go 3.5. So I'm going to mark 3.5, turn this around, that's 3 5/8, which would be 3/16 under 4, divided by 2. We're going to go 1 13 inches. 1 13 inches. Good enough. All right, so we have these marks. We want to make this shape. And how could you cut that? Well, a lot of ways to do it, but with the L fence, it's super easy. Let me show you. So we're going to tack a straight edge to those marks. So I'm just going to use a 23 gauge, and let me check these. Yeah, those are too long. Hold on. Please continue to hold. All right. And you could use double stick tape or maybe blue tape with super glue, or a couple of pins. All right, now with the L fence, we can loosen these guys. Get this up out of the way. And this is our material we're gonna cut. We're gonna drop that down on a couple of spacers and drop this blade down. Make it a little easier to see. Like that, and drop this guy down. I love the design of this. It works very well. So now, this straight edge will ride against that. We need to line up this edge of the L fence with the left side of the blade. So I'm gonna bring that back up. Bring this over. We need this higher than the material, of course, and just underneath the L fence.
Which is what the spacers are for.
Right in there will work. And then a number of ways you can line that up. I usually get it close there, and then you can feel the carbide. I'm gonna go up just a little bit more. You can feel the carbide with the edge of the fence when it's just in line. Feels good right there. Incidentally, this dimension is 4 inches, I believe, 4 1/8. So yeah, I can put my fence on about 4 because I'm allowing for the blade. So let's make a cut. Nice and flush, easy, very effective. Let's put this on the other side. That pops right off. we can just grab this and it breaks off below the surface. Put it on this side, right in there. So this could be used as a pattern. Let's say we want a board with that same shape. And I'm just going to line that up there. We'll do the same thing. Except I need longer pins, I believe. Yeah, those would probably work. That still clears plenty. Let's give it a go.
There are a ton of uses for this fantastic jig. If a guy has a bunch of edge banding, you can set it up to cut that at, practically flush, so there's very little to get the hardwood edging flush with the substrate, for instance. I believe in one of my other YouTube videos, Jigs and Fixtures, I utilize the same principle, but with a curved L fence and also at the bandsaw to get the edging flush with the substrate. Also, if you felt comfortable, you could simply use sandpaper adhered to the pattern to create these cuts.
So that's pretty cool, right? Let's say we want to cut a little bit of a rebate or rabbet in this.
We'll drop the blade down a tad.
Of course, this could be a dado blade, but let's say for the sake of the video, we just need a little rabbet. So I've moved that over. This needs to be slightly lower than that. So I can use something like this to gauge that. This edge will now ride against the L fence. We can make our cut.
All right, here I am cutting some zero clearance inserts. I have to create a bevel. They're being held with this special push block. They're kept tight with a pair of hedgehog feather boards, and of course utilizing the Ultimato L fence. If you look closely, you can see a couple of boards holding the feather boards in place to keep those from moving, and there you can see that crazy 68-degree bevel. Well, that's a wrap for Woodworking Jigs and Fixtures 4. Please remember to subscribe. That helps me out tremendously. These videos are a lot of work. And as always, thanks a ton for watching.